around so you can see the screen a little bit better. I'm Emily Anderson. I am the Capital Campaign co-chair, and I'm so happy that you're all here tonight with us. Thank you for joining us. I would like to thank, Mary thanked everybody, but there have been so many people involved in setting up this night and making this night happen, and people who have been very, very kind and generous with their time and their money in making this event happen. And Mary mentioned everyone, but I do want to say one very special thank you to my fellow committee co-chair, Jolene Moran. Thank you, Jolene, for everything you do. She has helped us so much with all the activities that we're involved in for the Capital Campaign. A very dear friend of mine once gave me a very special gift. It was a painting. And on that painting was a quote, and it said, "Be the change that you wish to see in the world." I'm sure all of you have heard this quote before. It's from Gandhi. And that is why I am here tonight. I am here to be the change for the Neenah community and the animals and people in the Neenah community. My background is I've volunteered in animal rescue and welfare for the last 20 years in the Fox Valley with different organizations. I am currently the marketing and PR director of Valley Cats Rescue. For the last 7 years, we have partnered with Neenah Animal Shelter over the years. We've taken cats from them when they're full, or if they reach out to us for help. And when we're over capacity, they will take kittens from us as well. So we have a great partnership with them. I've also volunteered a lot at the shelter, so I've seen firsthand the challenges that they face every day there. To begin, everyone received a blue folder with some communications materials, and in there is what we're calling the case statement, this brochure. We call it the case statement because it makes the case for why Neenah Animal Shelter needs a new facility. And you'll see on the cover of that we've chosen the theme, Help Build Hope. Our hope is to build a better future in the Neenah community for both the people that we help and also the homeless animals that we help every year. Our existing shelter is a tiny, outdated facility on the edge of town. It's out on County Road G. It was built in 1962, and it's just inadequate, it's inefficient, and it's outdated. We've had inspectors come through and advise us on what can we do with the existing facility. Is there any hope for it? There is not. The cost to upgrade the existing facility are exorbitant and would really divert resources from the money that we need to care for the animals. So essentially, the structure is beyond repair. Bear with me for a second here. And the board has been talking about this for the last couple years. They know that the need is there and determined that the most fiscally and organizationally responsible solution at this point is to build a new animal shelter. And they've been planning to launch a capital campaign for a long time. We recently formed a capital campaign committee of 41 people. They are listed in the back of your case statement. And we were so excited at the beginning of this year, and we're planning in January, and we had a big meeting at Lakeland College in February, and everybody was so excited, and we were moving forward, and then COVID-19 hit and changed all of our lives. So we were going to kick this off in the spring. We put it on hold and waited about 5 months, but the thing is the animals still need us. And the people that we help still need us, and the building is falling apart, and we desperately need a new facility. So that is what brings us to tonight. For those of you who haven't seen the shelter recently, I'm going to take you on a shelter tour. So let me start with that. And just 1 second on the volume. I already went around to everyone and apologized in advance for the technology, so because we're doing it on our own, but thank you. I'll get it to work. Thank you, Paul Moran and Kay Halbrook, for helping me with that.
cutie. Hi, sweetheart. Hi, cutie.
Here we are in Cat ISO, and as you can see, back to the space issue, this is actually where we do all of our medical check-ins for the cats and the dogs. Literally just like this is we bring in the new dog and we have our little medical corner. It's usually a little more picked up than this, but you know, the dogs are actually in this room with the cats, so as we're trying to do their medical check-ins, their vaccines, their dewormers, they're distracted by the cats. The cats are getting stressed out because obviously we have dogs in this room. So, but this is the best space we have for it. There's really nowhere else for us to do it. So even our medical table here, you know, it's a catch-all. So we just move stuff, get out what we need, clean it up. So here in our kitchen, walkway, food prep, medical prep area, as you can see, this is the only spot we have to do our dishes. Keep in mind we have about 100 animal kennels in the building for cats and dogs. So every morning when we clean, this is stacked with dirty dishes. We have to get those cleaned, washed, dried, and put away before we open to the public. So that's all happening in the morning. Our medications for the daily meds. This is everybody who is on meds right now. So we have to prep this all out. We have to do the dosages here and just kind of work out of this area. Again, this is a main thoroughfare. It's the only way from the office to the dog kennels to the cat room. So no matter what, you're going to be in somebody's way.
This is our laundry area where we store all of the clean bedding and blankets and cat pillows and dog pillows. Here's our industrial wash machine that's kind of on its last legs. We've been babying it along. And then we have a dryer just like you would have in your home. And there's lots of laundry always because we have to keep the bedding clean, the cages clean. We have staff have scrubs so that if there's animals that are sicker and they need to suit up a little bit more for their own protection, we're washing those things on a daily basis. And then we have the plumbers come in because you can see our piping is outdated, and they just said it's probably cost prohibitive to come and do all the repairs and replacements in this building, that it wouldn't even really be worth it. It would just be a drain on our shelter resources that we need for the animal care.
Right, here is our visiting room. So this is literally where everything happens. So our adoptions, our surrenders, our meet and greet. As you can hear Roxy barking in the background. Our dog kennels are right through that wall. So when we're trying to do surrenders or adoptions, we are trying to talk over the other dogs because they're in their kennels and there's nowhere else to go. This room is very small, very cramped. We also use this as an enrichment room in the winter. So when it's too cold for the dogs to go outside, which is 6 months out of the year here in Wisconsin, they do get to spend time in here. But it's still not, it's not very bright. It's not very fun to be in here by yourself. So We actually have dogs that have chewed up the chairs. We also have cabinets here that store all of our adoption folders and just miscellaneous office stuff because there's nowhere else for us to put it. It's getting to the point that these are kind of bursting at the seams. As you can see too, like just out of space to put things, we have to have things up on top, which just doesn't make us feel good when we are, doing a surrender, somebody is saying goodbye to their pet, and we just have stuff everywhere.
Okay, I have personally referred to the Neenah Animal Shelter as the little shelter that could for many, many years. Because despite all the obstacles that they encounter every single day, and everything that the daily rush of people, it's surrenders and adoptions and strays and the community aid officers, the police contacting them, they do an amazing job caring for the animals and finding them forever homes. And this has really been especially true the last 10 years since Mary Sutton and Kay Pavlik have served on the board. And Ellen Pickler is the shelter coordinator, and she has been an amazing asset to the team for the last 4 years. Plus, Cindy Flauger is the executive director, has so many complementary talents. They really have an excellent leadership team in place, and that makes a huge difference. And they've worked around and around and around the current restrictions of and the shortcomings of the current building. But the needs of the community are increasing every year. And last year they took in a record number of animals and cared for them. They had 684 last year. So in order to keep providing, thank you. In order to keep providing these resources to our community as these needs increase, we need a higher functioning building. And if you look at your case statements, the brochures, and kind of flip through there, pages 7 and 8, the one with the spread with all the pictures really shows all the details of the existing shelter, and we'll highlight some of those in the videos as well, and the reasons that we need a new facility. And that will give you a good idea of the daily staff, the challenges that the staff and the volunteers face at the shelter. But now I'd like to pause for a very special story about a dog. His name is Prince Ali, and I will have Ellen Pickler come up, the shelter coordinator. She's going to tell you about Prince Ali's story and how they helped him.
All right, hello. Thank you all for being here. Real quick, I just wanted to mention that I've been with the shelter for almost 5 years, and every day we come in and we just do what we can with the space we have. But after watching those videos that Emily put together, it's like, wow, how do we even do that? So I just wanted to mention that. But here we have Prince Ali. So he actually came to the shelter right in March of this year, so right as COVID hit. And he is from one of our transfer partners here in Wisconsin. When we do have the space available, we have a couple Wisconsin shelters that will reach out to us if they are overcrowded or they're having difficulty placing a dog. They will reach out to us and we will take them in. So he was very nervous at the other shelter, and they were very worried about his adoptability, but I said, we'll work with him, we'll see what we can do. Bring him to us. So as you can see, he was very thin, his spine was showing, his ribs were showing, he was skittish, he was nervous about the people, but he warmed up in a couple days, and we took him to the vet for his general checkup, and we found out that he was heartworm positive. So that means that they have to go through 4 months of special treatment. They can't be super active, they need to be in a low stress environment. So we try to put them in a foster home, and we just so happen to have a very kind volunteer dog walker who recently lost one of her dogs, and she was kind of looking to start looking for a new companion, and I said, hey, Ali needs somewhere to go just temporarily, no strings attached, 4 months, and then you can give him back. And about halfway through his treatment, she called me and said, can we keep him? So Prince Ali is in his forever home. His mom had to work late tonight, which is why he was not able to attend. But that's his story.
Thank you, Ellen. I have a little video clip of Prince Ali from his owner here too, of him today. And those are the lives, an example of the lives that they save. Bear with me for a second. Okay, sorry about that. Okay.
Here we are outside the front door of the shelter. And as you can see, because we're so strapped for space, sometimes we're spilling out outside. Over here we have our donation bin. That's where people drop things off, so until they can be sorted, it's again outside. We have some kettles that were cleaned up and had to be dried out. And then we have our event supplies out here.
Welcome to our meeting room. In the winter, this is not as pleasant as it is in the summer.
My name is Chuck Wismer, and I've been a volunteer out here at the Neenah Animal Shelter for about 9 years. And over that time, there's been a lot of changes, and tried to improve the quality of our dogs' life out here. The shelter was built in the early 1960s, and needless to say, a lot has changed in animal welfare in those years since then. Though it served us well, it really has many, many limitations for dogs, cats, and the staff. There's no separation of the staff where they can get away, and have a break. The dogs, where we can move the kennels and everything, they don't really have the yards that they need to roam out in and have a good time in. The shelter itself has a lot of limitations in regards to the HVAC, the electrical system. It's just a real problem for what we want to do in today's world as far as computers and screens to show the animals. The water system, we place multiple water heaters. It's rather disjointed because we've added on in several different locations. And then really, with the space that we have, we'll just try to do as best we can.
Hi, so many of you may not be aware that part of our property here at the current location is actually a pet cemetery. And we have, several people have buried their beloved pets over the years. And as you can see, people still come and visit the graves of their beloved pets. So even though we have all of this land here, we cannot disturb it and build on it. People to this day still visit their pets. Although the cemetery actually is full, people can no longer bury their pets here, but this must remain undisturbed. So this is our pet play yard for our dogs, and as you can see, it just is not very large. We do our best so the dogs can come back here and play and run, but there isn't a lot of space. And the other thing people don't realize is how underwater this is in the spring and in the fall. It's not even usable because it floods back here, and it's just not even usable for the dogs. So it's really inadequate for them right now.
You know, we're in our backyard. What's up against some of the kennels that we have, everything. And it's really a low-lying area. This is dramatically floods every spring and during the year. Anytime you get any kind of rain, it's just really unusable that it has. The entire property is built on a floodplain. So not only in here does it flood, but also out in the cemetery area floods out and everything. And it's just, it's not a very conducive location as far as the drainage that we have out here.
And now I would like to pause again and welcome Mary Sutton, who is going to share a special story about a dog named Shadow, who she fostered and then adopted.
So
every day in an animal shelter is different. We never know what animals are going to be coming through our doors. And about 5 years ago, the Neenah police came into the shelter with a little senior dog that they had seized from a home for neglect. And when the staff saw this little dog, it was just unimaginable that anybody could treat an animal in that way. Little Shadow, who was 13 years old at the time, was covered in dried feces. Her eyes couldn't open, she couldn't walk, her feet were just caked in this mess. It was just disgusting. And so the first thing we did is we took her to a groomer, and it took 2 trips to the groomer to get over 2 pounds of dried feces off of this little dog. After that, she had to go to the veterinarian right away, and it's not a surprise that she did not have any veterinary care. Among other problems and issues that she had raging infections in both of her ears. Medication didn't take care of it, and talking to surgeons at the referral center in Appleton, they said the only way she'll be pain-free is to remove her ear canals. So yes, she will be deaf, but at least she will not be in pain. So we did that for her. That little dog deserved to be out of pain. So we had her ear canals removed, and she needed to recover in a foster home where she would get some very good post-op care. And it turned out that she went into a foster home with a vet tech who was able to give her that care. She needed to be tube fed for a while because she had trouble eating, and she was a little wobbly when she walked because of she had balancing issues. So after about a month, she had recovered enough to come back to the shelter, and everybody fell in love with her. Despite everything she endured, she was the most loving, wonderful little dog, and that included me. So I decided that I was going to foster her, and so I took her home. And after a few weeks, I told my husband we were adopting her. And she was with us for 3 years. Now, she was a senior girl. She started to lose her eyesight. So I had an elderly, deaf and blind dog. But she enjoyed life. She loved her walks. It took us an hour to go half a block because she sniffed every blade of grass along the way. But she was with me for 3 years, and she crossed the Rainbow Bridge at age 16. But I was just blessed that I could have her in my life, and I was just so happy that I could give her a loving home for her last years.
The shelter currently, too, we're located in an industrial park, basically. So there's often a lot of truck traffic and just action zones here. We are fortunate we do have a path that works in the summertime and the fall. When the snow comes, it's less than ideal to walk. The dogs love the industrial park and what we have. But, we make do.
So right now we're in Alfred's kennel. So he came in his stray a few days ago, and as you can see, he's very shy. But once he recognizes you, then he's very open, and then he wants to be your friend. As you can hear, it's very loud in our dog area. So with the new building, our hope would be that we could actually separate our little guys from the big ones. So the dog right across from him is actually 95 pounds, and then we have a 70-pound hound who is doing all the barking. And you can imagine how terrifying that is to a little 10-pounder like Alfred.
Hi, sweetie.
Hi, my name is Michael. I work at the animal shelter, and this is Boo Boo. We just got him yesterday, and we named him Boo Boo because he got, as you can see, he got a boo boo on his nose. He got hit by a car this past Wednesday, so just less than a week ago.
Here is our dog ISO area, and very similar to the rest of the building is we are just looking for space. As you can see, the hallway is very narrow, so new dogs. So this is where brand new strays and surrenders come in, and it can be a very traumatic experience for a dog because they're in a new area, they're next to other new dogs, so everybody's just kind of scared and barking. You can't see him now, but we have a little guy in here, and then we had a bigger dog earlier. So I think what kind of happened is the bigger dog scared him, and now he's hiding under his bed. But just having more space, having more ability to separate the large dogs from the little dogs, even at the intake point, and also up in adoption, because that's something we have up there as well. You have your tiny chihuahuas right next to your 100-pound Rottweilers, and they just scare each other. Okay. So under this towel is actually our dog wing scale. So that's another thing that goes along with space is we don't actually have a medical check-in area. So every dog that comes in has to come into this room to be weighed. And again, if there are other dogs in here and they're barking, or if they're just nervous being in a new environment, being taken into this little corner can be very scary. This is also where we have our dog washing tub. So same thing, this is not a lot of space to get a dog in there and bathe them.
And Boo Boo is still available for adoption. And now I'd like to welcome Kay Pavlik, who's going to tell a little story about a tiny little kitten named Stitch.
Hi, this is my Stitch. And I first met Stitch on a kind of rainy, cold Wednesday afternoon when I happened to stop by the shelter to drop off some things as I usually do. And when I walked in the door, we had just received in from the town of Winneconne a litter of 6 kittens. They were anywhere from, I think they were probably about 10 days old. Now when you have young kittens like that, and there was no mom, they don't know what exactly happened to the mom. She either, she may have met with a bad end, she may have got hit by a car, or maybe she just decided motherhood wasn't for her. But anyway, she was there. We did not have any, there was no mother involved in this with these kittens. When you have kittens this young, they require a lot of care. And the staff immediately asked if I could please take those kittens home until another foster home could be found. When you have, like I had mentioned, a lot of care, by a lot of care I mean you get up every 2 to 4 hours to feed them. They need to be pottied because they cannot potty on their own. And you even need to regulate their temperature to make sure that they stay warm, but not too warm. So I said, yes, of course, I would take them. And I left there with 6 kittens. It wasn't too long before I realized that not all was going well with this litter. So On Saturday, I got an appointment with our vet, who graciously fitted me in on a Saturday afternoon. And you know that's a very hard thing to do, is to get an appointment with a vet on a Saturday afternoon. But he checked them over and they couldn't find anything that wrong. So I went back home with a few instructions. But by Sunday night, I realized there was something terribly wrong with this litter. Monday morning, we were back into the vet, and by Tuesday afternoon, Stitch was the only one of the group remaining. Unfortunately, the vet felt that the rest of them had distemper, and they did not live, they did not survive. I was required to quarantine Stitch for 2 weeks to make sure that he would not come down with distemper himself. For 2 weeks, I gowned up, gloved up, went into his room every couple of hours to provide him with food and comfort and whatever. He never got distemper, but that's not to say that he wasn't a lonely little kitty. In the time that I had him, and I did keep him for the whole foster amount of time, we learned how to, I had to teach him how to use his litter box. We teach him how to eat wet food and lap milk, and then eat kernels, and then, of course, lap water so they can, as all other cats do. This is something that all of our fosters who take kittens that don't have mothers need to do for their foster babies. And so fostering for the shelter is extremely important. At about 3 months, it was time for me to give this little guy up. So he went back to the shelter. He was neutered, and he found a very nice home with a family and a couple of kids, and is living out his life. So that's my little Stitch. And we get a lot, unfortunately, we get a lot of stories like Stitch's, so thank you.
When animals come in, we never know what condition they're going to be in. So as you can see, this one's a little more worse for wear. So they definitely have some things going on, some ear infections, and she has some dental issues. So right off the bat, we just try to get them basic medical care. So she'll start on antibiotics and dewormers, things like that. We'll give her a bath, get her cleaned up, obviously get her into a veterinarian to be better assessed on what's going on. So in our cat ISO area, this is everybody who is not up for adoption yet. So whether it is being on stranglehold, recently surrendered, going through medical treatment, that's a huge problem in regards to separating out our animals. So as you can see, these three all have upper respiratory infections, which is why they have tags that say we're sick. That's why there are towels over their cages, so that to lessen the spreading of it, because they are in this room with healthy cats, such as Lord Quicktoes, but being that close in proximity and in the same room, we're subjecting the potential that all the cats are going to get that upper respiratory. And same goes for fleas, ringworm, anything like that. So if we actually had room that we could put medical quarantines in one area and healthy, incomings in another, it would just be amazing.
So one of the challenges as a volunteer is that we have cats in cages, and that's necessary, I guess. But if we had a cat room or several cat rooms, it would be much more conducive to having more of them out at the same time. Hello, Springers. And the ability to socialize multiple cats and get them used to each other for multi-cat households and when they're ready for adoption. So having that extra room, as you can see, we have all the cats. We try to get out at least once a day for 20 minutes, but 20 minutes just isn't enough.
One reason that we needed a bigger area, or new facility I should say, here at the Neenah Animal Shelter, is to make little kitties live here and have their own space. If he wanted to be an only cat and he didn't like other cats here, then he could have a larger space for himself, so we could get him to kind of open up a bit more, because there's a lot of cats in here right now. It's a little stressful for him.
This is our boy, Smokey Husky. When he came to us, he was 14 years old. He came as a stray. And this little man was just covered in fleas. Actually, the flea dirt was so thick on him that he had like a black strip all the way down his back. It was horrendous. He had to have blood transfusions and whatever because they were just eating him alive. So we have nursed him back to health, and we're trying to find him.
One of the biggest concerns here at the shelter is the heating and cooling. It's extremely hot in here in the summer. There's one air conditioner that sits on the floor, but it's not enough to cool this room. So it's uncomfortable for the cats primarily, but also for the volunteers and the staff. And then in the winter, it can become extremely cold in here, and the heating system does not cover it. And they've even sometimes had to cover the windows with blankets or towels to keep the warm air in.
We could really use a new shelter. We could use more room. We could use the space when they get sick so that we could separate them better. We could use more room for when people want to come and visit and potentially adopt. What we have just is totally inadequate.
This is Malika. She is about 2.5 years old. She has a special story because, so she was actually found as a stray, and she was invited into the home of the finders, and it turned out that she was pregnant, and they allowed her to stay with them until she had her kittens, and she could raise them, wean them. They were able to find homes for all of their kittens, but Malika, they just couldn't find anybody who wanted her, probably a little bit to her age, and you know, kittens are always popular. The biggest concern they had was she is FIV positive, and their local shelter wasn't exactly FIV cat friendly. So they actually reached out to us. So they drove her a couple hours just to bring her to us specifically because they knew that FIV doesn't really affect how we adopt them out. It doesn't need to affect how we house them. As long as they're happy and healthy, you know, they'll stay with us as long as it takes to find a home. As you can see, she's very sweet, very petite. So she'll be a great house cat for anybody. And she can go home with other cats that do not have FIV. Again, as long as everybody gets along, it's not going to transfer between cats. And yeah, so we took her in because we know we'll find her a great home.
Smokey Husky is still waiting for a home. And I'd like to introduce Cindy Flauger, the Executive Director of the Neenah Animal Shelter. And she will talk to you a little bit about the shelter transition over the years.
Good evening. Thank you, Emily. So, first fun fact for the day. Today is my 66th day on the job. And I could not be more excited. The timing with what is going on is just fabulous, and I think that we're headed in the right direction. It's just really an exciting and rewarding time to be a part of it. The other fun fact, made it 5 weeks before my first cat came home. So we got a problem here. But my background is as a social worker, and I have worked in the not-for-profit sector of our community for, well, let's not say how many years, but several years. And my strength has been in working with programs, leading programs that focus on serving our community. And I think sometimes, what's the connection to animal welfare? Well, the well-being of ourselves as individuals and our communities are often very intertwined with us being pet owners or pet lovers. And especially in times like this where we've had to isolate, people are really finding health, mental health and comfort in being pet owners. So to me, thinking about everything we've heard tonight, oh, look at, I get fireworks when I talk. Wow, I'm doing good. So anyway, I know we're running over, and so I'm going to try and tighten my piece up a little bit here, but there are a few things that I want to make sure we hear about. We heard about the wonderful thing the staff and volunteers do despite the shelter, despite the age of the shelter. We've heard about the caring stories and the compelling stories of the animals. But what we don't always think about is, what is the benefit of this shelter to the community? And so that's what I just want to touch on a little bit quickly. And thank goodness for this little nice nightlight here. In 2019, Emily mentioned this, we served over 680 animals through the Neenah shelter, and you saw the size of that. But what she didn't mention, that was a 26% increase from the year before. And so we know there's a need in our community. When a stray finds their way to our door, we can make sure they have a safe haven. They have a place where people are really working hard to make sure they are healthy, and that, if possible, they are reunited with their families. So last year we reunited and brought joy to 90 families. We were able to find their owners. We also make sure none of our animals leave the facility without being vaccinated, spayed or neutered, or microchipped. And how is that a benefit to the community? Well, vaccinations improve the long-term health of the animals, but they also reduce community health risks. Spaying and neutering controls the pet overpopulation, and the microchipping makes that reunification that much easier. So that's definitely a benefits to the community. Having animal shelters in the community keeps strays off the street. 335 of the animals cared for in 2019 were strays roaming in our communities. Getting them off the streets not only protected the animals from being hit by cars or attacked by other wildlife, frankly, it helped us from having them become nuisance in our own backyards. So over 500 strays and surrenders received a second chance last year. They were adopted out through our shelter, so they found their forever homes, and those are the successes we want to be able to continue to do. We serve as an educational resource for the community. We help save families that may be thinking about surrender, if we can just help them with behavior problems and give them tips and training on that. So the other thing, and I think Emily mentioned this, we collaborate. We collaborate with area vets, we collaborate with other area shelters. Last year we were able to take in 200 other animals that were transferred by surrounding communities because they just didn't have room for the animals. So we were able to give them a chance as well. Looking to the future, a better facility can really help us enhance those services. We could add programs like low-cost vaccination clinics for people in our community that are income constrained. That helps people keep pets in their homes rather than surrendering them too, if they can have the supports they need. Our community needs a trap neuter release program. Other programs. Other communities have that program. They're successful. We just don't have the capacity to do it. That would allow community cats to return to the community, but without being contributors to that overpopulation. So anyway, I was going to share another personal story. I told you I'm going to cut down the time a little bit because we're running over, but I want to leave you with 2 points, please. The Neenah Animal Shelter's roots date back to an era or a time when animal care was really more about animal control. We've moved past that. We're now all about animal welfare. The challenge is, even though the staff and volunteers do a great job, they're still doing it in a facility that was built during the era of animal control. And then my other last thought is to piggyback off of a Gandhi quote that Emily shared before. I like this quote: "The greatness of a nation can be judged by the way its animals are treated." I would add, the greatness of a nation starts at the community level. We are a pretty great community. Help us do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. I will also try to talk a little faster to be cognizant of time here for you. I have one more video.
I think that we need a new shelter mainly because of space. We only have 13 dog kennels, and when people call to surrender their animals or we get strays coming in, a lot of times we have to deny them because we don't have the space, but it's really, you don't want to deny them. You want to be able to help them as best as you can and have the space to do that. And then as far as cats too, we have 2 rooms for cats, but only one of them we use for adoption, and it's full all the time. It's really cramped. A lot of times, like during the winter months, the cats will get sick because the airflow just isn't very good. And they're very close to each other, and it's really, really hard to keep them nice and healthy when it's such a cramped, small space. So just overall, a much bigger shelter would be extremely helpful.
Shelter building does not provide enough space for anything. Sometimes there's not enough room in the cat room for all the cats who are up for adoption to be there. So they're sitting in the back. Often they're very crowded, we get a large influx of animals. And the same thing with the dogs, there's not enough room, there's no place for people to spend time with a dog, especially in the winter when it's too cold to be outside. And not enough room for storage, not enough office space. When you walk into the building, you're in the office, which means that any phone calls going on or anyone that the staff are talking to, it's very difficult. And if somebody's surrendering a cat and they're emotional, there's no place to do that many times. And so we really are very strapped for space here. And even as far as the building's concerned, electrical outlets don't work. The plumbing system isn't good. My understanding is, I've never drank it, but the water here is very terrible tasting. It's just all around this building is falling down around our ears. It really has to be replaced.
So I think we need a new shelter because this one's really old and we really need the space. We need more laundry room, we need more bathroom space, we need more space for the animals so they can go out and run around, be happy. Being in a shelter isn't the best part of their lives, but when they have to be with us, we want it to be a good quality of life for them. And right now they don't really have as much space as we would love for them to have. So I'm back here with Lulu, and I wanted to talk about how important a surgical suite and a veterinary team would be to us, because I came from a bigger shelter where we had vets in every Wednesday. We had animals going to the vet every single day. There was like a daily vet trip, and having that sort of resource could save his nose, whereas now we have to go to actual clinics, and
he can't get in for a couple of weeks, so he's gonna lose that part of his nose, and he'll be fine. But if it gets infected, if it goes septic, you know, that is not a good situation for him, and we don't love having animals here, but we do love the animals that come in, and we care about them a lot. So anything that we can do so that they don't have to suffer, so they don't have to hurt while they're with us, is super important to us. It's the most important thing to us.
This is Chester recently. And I will tell you, Chester, in 20 years of animal rescue and welfare, he is one of the best happy tales, the best transformations that I've ever seen. Now I'm going to cut out the next video and some of the talk I was going to do to be respectful of everyone's time, but I can send the links to everyone I got your emails for, because now we have some very special guests who have been waiting to join us. So if you'll direct your attention, Ellen Pickler will be bringing out our first special guest, Sandy Dossie and Neenah Animal Shelter alumnus Taz. I kind of sprung it on them, so sorry. Okay, so this is Taz, and Ellen's going to tell his story.
All right. So I apologize if I tear up, because I love Taz. Sorry. I've been excited all day to see him. So Taz, his owner reached out to us right at the beginning of COVID due to health reasons. Just a lot going on for him, and he actually had 2 dogs and 6 cats in his house. They were covered in fleas. Most of them had pretty major medical issues that he was unable to care for. So Taz being one of them, he was one of the first to arrive at the shelter, and we had to take him to the referral center because we noticed his back legs didn't quite work the way they should. And it turned out that he has a herniated disc in his spine, and there wasn't really anything we could do about it. So it had fused, it had done what it was going to do, but as you can see, he gets around just fine. He's a happy little guy. He was almost bald from the fleas, as was the other dog that came in with him. As far as the cats, they had ear infections, they had fleas, they were hairless, one had allergies, some had sassy personalities, but they have all been adopted, and actually Michael, one of our employees who is here, adopted Wendy, the last of the cats of that group to go. So they were just a big story because it was one person, just had a few too many animals, just reached out to us for help, and we were able to get everybody a home.
Thank you for that story. Thank you for bringing Taz. And now we have Kendall with Sarah. Come on down, Kendall. Kendall is the owner and Sarah's the dog.
All right, so here we have Sarah. So she was surrendered to us back in December of 2018 because she was too much for the family. You know, animals get surrendered for various reasons. But as you can see, she's very happy, very friendly, a little bit of a couch potato. I was informed earlier that she is very vocal and she has a lot of stories to tell. But she was actually at the shelter a record short time of 1 week before she was adopted.
Sorry. Okay. All right. Okay. So thank you, Kendall and Sarah, for joining us. And now we have Debbie and Minnie. Come on down. Welcome.
All right, so here we have, she is now known as Minnie, but she came to us a couple months ago and we called her Map. That day we were running really low on names and somebody looked over and saw a map hanging on the wall and said, there you go. But she was, one of our Wisconsin rescue partners actually reached out to us because they had Minnie for about a month and they were having a heck of a time getting her adopted. They told us that barely anybody could enter her kennel. She would scream if you tried to touch her. She was afraid of men. She was afraid of other dogs. And they couldn't get anybody to even look at her to consider adoption. So we said, hey, we'll give it a try. We'll see what we can do. Within a day, she made friends with the staff. She was being really good. And she was adopted very quickly. As you can see, she's pretty well adjusted. She's not as fearful anymore. And she's just a happy little dog.
Thank you so much, Debbie, for bringing Minnie. You can continue to visit. And our final guest, very, very special guest, we have foster volunteer Barb Yurga with her foster dog, Quinn. And Quinn has a very special story. We are happy to have them here. Welcome.
All right, so this is little Quinn. So she is between 8 to 10 months old, and if you can see her, if you just want to walk her, yeah, in the light. So if you take note that her right leg is shaved. So Quinn's story started as somebody reached out to us because of a Facebook post that was circulating with a concern about a dog, and we just said, we need the owner to reach out to us and we'll see what we can do to help. So the owner reached out to us, and as it turns out, Quinn had been hit by a car about 2 days earlier, and they did not have the funds to help her. They reached out to multiple vets, but the vet bills were just racking up and they knew that it was going to be very expensive. So it turns out Quinn actually had a fractured femur and then a couple other bumps and scrapes. So she was brought into us, she was surrendered, and we were able to get her over to the referral center right away for x-rays and treatment. And she had her surgery that afternoon, so she had to have pins placed into her femur to get that repaired, but luckily the fracture was fairly clean and everything went back to where it was supposed to be. And then in steps Barb. She does not have any pets of her own, so we use her a lot for leg injury dogs, ACL repair dogs, and heartworm. So I called her up and I told her what we had, and she said, yeah, Quinn can come hang out with me for a few weeks. So Quinn gets her staples out in another week or so, and then she needs another couple weeks of just quiet time to help that leg heal, and then she'll get spayed and she'll be up for adoption. So in a month or so, I would say watch our website for her.
Thank you so much, Barb and Quinn. We're so happy she's healing well. I'm going to cut down the end of the presentation to be respectful of your time. I did want to say, too, we invited cats, but once they heard tuna wasn't on the menu, they politely declined. But again, thank you all, every single one of you, for attending this evening. We are so grateful that you came out during COVID, while it's chilly. It really turned out to be a beautiful night. I do have a couple announcements. The first is I wanted to let everyone know that we are actively pursuing 2 land opportunities. We have a 2-acre parcel in Fox Crossing and a 5-acre parcel in town of Vinland. We are working with a realtor and we're negotiating pricing right now. We hope to put in an offer on one of those parcels in the next month or so. So if anyone here has input or wants more details on those 2 properties of where we should locate the new shelter, they're both Neenah addresses. We would love to have your advice or input on that. We're happy to share any and all information. So we are moving forward. The second announcement is we just heard yesterday, and this is really our kickoff tonight, but John Bergstrom had reached out to us, and Bergstrom Automotive has pledged $25,000 to our campaign. So we're very, very grateful for their generosity. And the last announcement is the biggest announcement of all. And I'm extremely excited to announce that we have a donor who's offered to match donations up to $100,000. Thank you, Paul and Jolene Moran, for donating to help us build the new Neenah Animal Shelter. We are so humbled and so grateful and so appreciative. So I really hope that all of you will consider, pledging a donation to our campaign this evening or taking the materials home with you and reviewing them. We will all be here after the event if you want to talk to any of us that presented tonight. We are very transparent and we'll share all information with you. You also have business cards in the folders. You can reach any of us through reaching Ellen at the shelter with any other questions. But please stay as long as you'd like, have a few more drinks, and I will follow up on email and send you the links to the full presentation so you can see the other videos as well. But thank you again for coming. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
I could hold you for a million years to make you feel
Yeah, right?
But I'll never do you wrong. No doubt in my mind.
No pressure. I just saw Husky and I thought of you, so.
I go hungry, I go black and blue. I go crawling down the avenue. No, there's nothing that I won't do to make you feel better. a little bit long.
Thank you. The winds are changing and the world is free. You ain't seen nothing like me yet. I can make you happy, make your dreams come true. No, there's nothing that I wouldn't do. Go to the ends of the earth for you to make you feel mine. To make you feel mine.
Not quite yet.
Strong, strong in my pain with his fingers, singing my life is prayer, killing me softly with his song, killing me softly with his song, telling my whole life with his song, killing me softly. With his song, I heard he sang his song. I heard he had song, and so I came to see him and listen for a while. And there he was, young boy, a stranger to my eyes, strumming my pain with his fingers, singing my life, his words, killing me softly with his song, killing me softly with his song, telling my whole life with his words, killing me softly with his song. I felt all flesh with fever, embarrassed by the crowd. I felt he found my letters and read each one aloud. I prayed that he would finish, but he just kept right on, strumming my pain with his fingers, singing my life, his words, killing me softly with his song, killing me softly with his song, telling my whole life with his words, killing me softly